Hey guys, how's it going? It's been a little while since I made a video. Apologies for that. I definitely want to make a few more because there's a lot more I want to say. Um, and I've basically just been busy. It's spring here in Australia, which means a lot of wildlife is on the move. So it's my busiest time of year. Work wise and just, family stuff as well. Nothing major, um, but there's definitely, like I said, there's a few videos I want to make. And there's a few videos I feel I have to make to establish my where I stand on various issues before I really get into the juicy stuff that I want to talk about. And today's video is no different. This one's going to be a fun one. It's basically what I think magic is. Now, I could be completely wrong. But like I think I've mentioned in a few videos, a lot of where I'm coming from and what interests me is simplifying various things to probably as fundamental a form as the human psyche can actually understand. And basically, because what I'm trying to say is when I understand how stuff works, I have more faith in that thing that it will work. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. I've done for myself here with magic, and now I'm going to share it with you. You can take away from it as much or as little as you want, but I can say that probably for maybe 5-10% of you, you will have your minds blown this evening, because I like to. So I've got a few different ideas on things, and some of them are kind of intuitive, some of them you kind of know, and some of them you've just never thought of, I guess. But anyway, here it goes. So, magic. Now, for starters, with magic, before I even jump in there, I want to talk about the limitations of language. And the problem with language um, is that it can. Now, I've got notes here, so. And they're very poorly written, so because it's a complex subject and I want to say a lot in as short a period of time as I can, without getting off the tangent. So, um, trouble with language is it can group together a bunch of concepts that aren't necessarily related. And, things like, for example, there's some tribe in, I don't know, the Amazon or somewhere that has like no color for blue, but 10 different words for green. Likewise, magic, um, language can do the same and sort of split apart concepts that really should be together. Likewise, it can also, oh, sorry, what am I saying? It groups together. So it can do the opposite. So it can split apart. I just lost track of everything I said, but it can either split apart concepts that sometimes should really belong together, or it can group together concepts that possibly should be apart. Um, and magic is one of them. Um, so you've heard of. So you may remember, my I did a video. I think it might have been the last video on what I believe the unconscious and a definition for consciousness. That fundamentally is also what I think magic is. I don't think there's any difference at all between spirit, consciousness, life, the soul, and magic. Um, And once I kind of get into it, you'll see why. So I think the very fact we have two different words for magic and life in itself hides a lot of things about magic that should be really obvious. The first one is it's not something you can ever separate from. Everything you do involves some element of magic. Generally not conscious, but obviously once you begin to know about it and how it works, obviously you can move that into conscious form. Now when you look at things like high magic, you can see how this is kind of obvious, because it's all about personal development, and one could say that's the purpose of life. So there it is. But even low magic, just doing your little things to heal someone, or attract luck or whatever, even that itself is life. And the reason that is I'm approach everything from quite a pantheistic, pagan pantheistic background. So ultimately, there's a source. The universe is the body of that source, and we are all individuated consciousnesses. So, I'll get into that. But that's the general gist of it. So even kind of just spells and rituals, that's all part. That's directing life for conscious purpose, in just a different way than you're used to, as opposed to physically doing whatever something. But anyway, I'm rambling. So what do I got here? And you'll actually find that once you kind of reach a particular level of understanding about magic, you won't do a lot of what they class as low magic, because that stuff will just happen anyway. You will find there won't be much you need out of life that just won't come naturally. And like I said, once you I think I'll get into this a bit later, but the synchronicities will bring and direct you towards everything. A true magician casts no spells, one could say. But having said that, I do not want to dissuade anyone from casting spells or trying it out. The more you try it out and the more you see how it all works, that it does work, the more faith, because that's one of the key fundamental parts about magic, is you actually need to believe that it works in order for it to work. And that's, have the faith. And that's the hardest thing. But once you kind of develop that part of everything, faith that you can do something that will make a difference, it will happen much more readily and much more consistently for you. How does it work? You may remember in my kind of consciousness video, I said effectively I gave my definition of my personal definition of consciousness, which is the best, I think, which was the feeling of processing information is my definition of consciousness. And I think I went into it. I think this definition of consciousness is the most usable on a scientific level and on a metaphysical, occultic level, esoteric level as well. So, the feeling of processing information, that is consciousness. And like us just established, consciousness, life, spirit, soul, and magic are the same thing. But when I'm talking about magic, so we got two things with life. We've got feeling and we've got information. Life is consciousness about those two coming in, the interaction of those two things. That is consciousness. Now, with magic, instead of feeling, I use the word emotion. And instead of information, I use the word imagination. So, magic is essentially has two functional parts: your imagination and your emotion. Everything else beyond those two are just props, and they may be very effective props, so do not let me sort of talk, that's actually the whole point of this, is to give you a foundation for you to use the props of whatever system of magic you choose more effectively, because you'll have kind of a working knowledge, you'll have an understanding of how it functions at the most basic form. So all systems of magic are built upon this: the interaction of emotion and imagination, building the emotion and directing it with the imagination, and belief comes into that imagination. See, that's the tricky bit, because part of that imagination is having faith in your belief that it will work, and it is working, and it has worked. So that's part of the belief side of it all. Now, you may notice that I haven't mentioned archetypes and magic with entities and all of that sort of stuff. That's because you still have to get this first shit right before you move on to controlling these things and directing them with your mind anyway. So it's still the same thing, and that is essentially how these things function too, but at a slightly different level from the human experience, at least. Now what do we got here? So how does it work? What have I written here? Sorry guys, I've written something and my handwriting's so bad. The first thing doesn't matter, it just does. Strongly believe. Well, okay, I got no idea. So possibly I've missed just an important point here. But the next bit is, like I said, I believe everything functions. I have kind of a pagan pantheistic belief. This is the most important point. Magic works at the quantum level. So you've got your Newtonian material world, as we are all functioning and aware of and do all our science in. And then we have the quantum world, or as we sort of call it in magic, the astral world. Now there's all sorts of people, high magic, and I think in a lot of other systems like to split into a billion different. You got your ethereal plane, your astral plane, your this plane, your mental plane, your spiritual plane, blah 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 blah. I think that's unnecessary complication of something that you just can't be sure lays like that anyway. It's like gender in 2021. I think this quantum level is a spectrum between, say, the ethereal, which, is almost waking. So you can almost see that. In fact, you can. The second side, if you're gifted or lucky or in the right, frame of mind, all the way through astral, So I think this quantum magical primordial world, I think it's this one and there's that one. And everything that we have in this one, so time, space, material, matter, is a projection, and our experience of that, the most important thing, as fractions of consciousness from the greater whole, it's an all just a projection from this quantum realm. And because it's a projection, it's like it's all thought, whatever. I don't want to sound too hippie, but that's the way you've got to kind of think about it. Because that's probably as accurate as it actually is, and also because it works in terms of your visualization. If you imagine the whole universe, and for everything that you're probably interested in, the world is a great extension of your mind. For the purposes of magic, it's going to work a lot easier, because then the thought that you have in here much more easily translates to the thought or the action that you're trying to sort of institute with the assuming that's what you're trying to do. So within this quantum realm lies, it's almost like, I want to get into simulation theory one day, because even though I don't think it's quite accurate, I think how it portrays the world is the most accurate once you kind of take away the baggage of simulations and computers and programs, because I think that's where a lot of people get hang-ups on. But if you imagine that this quantum realm is essentially the program of everything that can, will, and has ever happened, time and space mean nothing. It's the best way of actually thinking about it. From that, as a consciousness, which is yourself or everybody else, moves through it, that's when this simulation throws out a reality that, we all share, but it is also a completely individual reality, and it's not beyond the realm, because it's caught up with the same thought that occurs in your head, this thought that is the world itself, this holograph, like I said, one and the same thing. You influence that. The only reason you don't influence it more is because you're competing with a lot of other consciousnesses that are alive at this present point and how they believe reality is. So so that's how it works. That's why it doesn't always work the way you want it to. It's not always consistent, because you're competing with every other consciousness and how they view reality. And the more unbelievable the magic is to your brain, or the more inconsistent it is with everybody else's. So especially if you try and do magic that involves other people that aren't thinking the same way you do, that's when things are going to screw up. That's when it's not going to work. And that's why it doesn't always work, even if you have everything right. Now, what else have I got here? Oh, bloody hell. I'm out of power, guys. Hang on, I'm in my car because it's the only time of day that I've actually had to say this. I wrote all this down yesterday, hoping I'd have some time, and it didn't happen. Oh, bloody hell. The radio is about to go on. Alright, so moving on. So that's how it works. Sorry guys. I'll pause. I'll try and pause this and cut it out. So essentially, sorry about the vote. Yeah, that's how it works at that. It works at that level But all the visualizations and everything you do on this level, because I mean they're kind of the same world. So look, I don't. No one can fully explain, but the visualizations that you have here, you'll find some of the most effective magic works is when you can visualize fully and believably the result you want. And I think you are connecting and creating within this quantum realm a connection to a future time that in this reality hasn't happened. Like I said, in the quantum realm, everything has already happened. So you're connecting with that, bringing it towards you. I don't want to get into complex stuff like multiple worlds theory and all of that. And I think dimensions and all, there are obviously more dimensions of that, but I think just thinking of things as material and the quantum is the simplest, most easiest way of doing it. Your visualizations, your building of emotion, you're visualizing energy, you're imagining what you're sending that energy to, is all creating this connection, and you're bringing it towards you. So how does it manifest in, when you've done some magic, how does that manifest in your life? I think one of the reasons, and I don't know if it's a conspiracy or what, this whole Harry Potter, Walt Disney view of magic, cartoony shit, that's a very recent thing. And I think it does magic, especially those starting out in magic, a bit of a disservice. Because that's how they imagine it happening. And unless you're kind of some demigod level guru, you're going to be very lucky if it ever manifests exactly like that in your life. Sometimes it probably will, to be honest. Generally not. Magic is about altering the odds of what happens in the natural world in your favor, towards what you want, towards your goal. So it's about the intention for the result that you want when you put it out there, using magic, and that intention itself is the magic. Like I said, the one and the same thing. You're not using magic to put it out there. The same thing, because that intention is life. It is your life energy, and that is what is going out into the wider universe, which is also your wider self on a greater level. It will affect. So that's why it will use almost always the existing laws of nature and coincidence and synchronicity to achieve its ends. Magic is like water. It's going to take water running downhill. It's going to take the easiest path. And the obstacles, the resistance in those paths are your disbelief that it can happen, and that disbelief can just be for a fleeting second in the middle of everything, and that intention gets caught up. That's why magic is so hard, because it's all about completely controlling your mind to send, so you got to overcome your own disbelief and your own sort of, undisciplined mind that will imagine and bring in thoughts of other things in that, engulf it in that intention that you send out, which is another reason it doesn't always work. But you're also dealing, like I said, with the other resistance for this magical water flowing towards its goal is everybody else and their ideas of how things and the world works. So the more the more your intention crosses one of those two things, your own disbelief and the disbelief of everybody else, the harder it is to achieve that. And that kind of brings in one element of magic that we all know about, but nobody ever has given a good explanation, I think, for why it matters so much. And that is secrecy in magic. Why it is important to keep your shit secret. Because once you involve other people, especially if those other people don't share the same, either they don't believe what you've done could happen, or you've just once you tell them, you've involved their consciousness and will with your shit. And if their beliefs about that are different to yours, that will alter the result as well. That is the most important. That is why secrecy is the most important. Such an important part of magic, because you just don't want to muddy your shit with other people's beliefs that aren't in sync with what your intentions are. So what else have we got? Alright. So, like I said, at the base of magic is emotion and imagination. Now things like spells and archetypes and gods and even demons and spirits, they are extensions of that. They are pathways. You can almost think of them established pathways that have been used by others through the maze of the quantum magical astral realm to get to this particular point. Some of those pathways, say, be they gods or demons or other entities or spirits or forms of consciousness, other entities, they have their own consciousness. So that is kind of like a living path that you're traveling down. And others that are kind of more dry spells, they're just not so not so much like that. They're just ruts through the wilderness that have been traveled, like I said, to get to a particular point, magical point that others have wanted to get to before and figured out a way already. So this, through ritual, spell work, you are finding that path, and through your imagination, and then the emotion is what travels down that path and creates the result of your intention. So when we kind of tap into old spells and use old things, or even if we create spells ourselves, we are, once again, what we are essentially doing is walk through these rituals. We are walking those pathways and putting our own emotional energy down them to get to the intent. And I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard. So this is where I start to kind of bring it into a more scientific realm, because I'm not sure. This, I think, actually taps into Rupert Sheldrake's morphological resonance theory, which is, to put it in a nutshell, is he believes that there are kind of memories of form that pass through time. That's one of the reasons that animals and humans and things take on the forms they do. And he came up with this theory because of the complete inability to DNA to explain form. He believes that this resonance comes, I think, from the quantum realm as well. And I think things like ritual and spell work, and even, say, reincarnation, taps into these. This morphological resonance is essentially an echo, a program within the quantum astral realm, like a spell, that we all grow into, that controls form. So that's where I want to in the future take these things. But for the moment, I'm gonna kind of bang on with this. And obviously, this emotion that you're sending down these ritual pathways, you also color it with your intent as it's going down these pathways. And I think that's why a lot of these old spells can be very powerful, but why you got to be very careful with them, because whoever created them and the other people that have used them do not have the exact same intent that you may have. You say, oh, a spell for, I don't know, whatever, love or something, their idea of love and what they want could be very different to you. So one of the things of Rupert Sheldrake's morphological resonance is the first time that anything is done. So he's tested this scientifically with creating new compounds, and as they crystallize, the very first time it happens, it takes a very, it takes a lot longer, it's a lot harder, may do it at this temperature, may next do it at that temperature. Each time it kind of gets closer to a specific temperature and it happens faster. And he's tested that with other things like knowledge, everything else. Once something is learned, and you see this with memes and ideas, and I think this psychic weather that Thomas Sheridan talks about is also all taps into this. And this morphological resonance, this echoes through the quantum realm that we tap into and use via our emotion and imagination to fulfill our intent. That is what actually magic is, and that's where I want to head. So let me see. And I think that is why all these, if you say, imagine an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in magic, and they see this system magic, that system magic, this crazy spell involving this and that, and then some other spell trying to do the same thing, and they look completely unattached, and they don't seem to there's absolutely no scientific rhyme or reason to it. There actually is. This is what they're tapping into. They're tapping into this quantum astral pathway through the hundreds of people that have walked down and done this spell before. So whether your spell involves, Buddhist meditation or hoodoo chicken feet or something, there's a reason it works, and that's what I'm trying to give you here. And I'm trying to give you that reason because to allow you, like I've explained it, give you the faith and help you in your journey here. Help me in my journey too, because if you've got any feedback, I'm quite welcome to it. Okay, so I'm going to get into black versus white magic. Now we've all got our there's the traditional definitions. Black magic, it's harming people, it's interfering with people's free will. White magic, it's good stuff, it's personal stuff, it's happy. And then you got grey magic, which is, who knows. That never made sense to me. Once you kind of really pick apart people's intentions and what drives them. So I kind of look at black and white magic on a more energetic level. White magic is something that adds to the life, the magic, the energy of a person or a situation. You're trying to build shit up through magic. Black magic is the opposite. You're trying to take away energy from that person or situation or whatever. Grey magic, you're just doing something. You don't have a clue if it's good or bad. You know, probably just doing something for yourself. And this is a thought I've had, and I think it simplifies everything a lot more. I'm beginning to believe that there may not be actual negative energy at all. I think negative energy is kind of like a heat-cold thing. There's no such thing as cold, it's just a lack of heat. There's no such thing as black magic, it's just magic and life that's being sucked away. There's no negative energy. Like I said, you can color energy, but I think anything that enters the realm of black magic, it's more you're just removing the, like fear. That is the energy being sucked out of a situation. Guilt, you're constantly bleeding energy, life energy, magic. When you hang, you're stuck with some negative energy vampire of a person. It's not their bad energy that's the problem. It's the fact that they're taking your energy. That's the problem. So that's something I've been playing around with in my mind. An evil sort of area or a situation or a landscape feature, it's something that will take your energy away. It's not you're reacting with bad energy, it's taking energy away, lowering that vibration. Alright. What have I got here? I've got living a magical life. Hang on. So, going from that magic is life and life is magic and the two are inseparable, now you can see how things like music and art and everything else are also acts of magic. Everything you do is an act of magic because it's an act of life. Especially art, because you're tapping into that sort of astral, magical, quantum realm to influence through nothing else except your work of art, to influence a situation and a mind, other people's minds. That's what you're doing through this art. And in life, most people are victims. They live their whole life as victims to their emotions and their imagination. What you're trying to do with magic, and we're talking sorry, just